How can you just sit there? Don't you care about what this is doing to us?
I need you to be mature about this.
I need you to be mature about this. That's what Daniel Park told his wife the night he asked her to welcome his mistress into their home. Elena had given up everything for this man, her country, her career, her identity. She'd endured 3 years of brutal fertility treatments while his family whispered that she was broken, that she wasn't good enough for their bloodline. But here's what Elena didn't know, what Daniel had hidden from her for their entire marriage. He was the one who couldn't have children. He'd known for 6 years, and he let her believe the failure was hers. So when he asked her to be mature about watching another woman take her place, to smile while his pregnant mistress moved into the guest wing of their marital home, Elena made a choice. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she didn't break. She walked out with one suitcase and a fury that would burn his entire world down. What happens next is the kind of story that changes everything you think you know about power, revenge, and what it means to rebuild yourself from ashes. The plot twists will blow your mind. Trust me when I say you'll want to hear every word of this. Smash that like button, grab your popcorn, and let's dive in. The words landed like glass shattering on marble. I think we should open the marriage. Elena's hands stilled on the dining table, her fingertips resting against the cool surface as if it might anchor her to reality. Across from her, Daniel sat with the posture of a man delivering a business proposal, back straight, hands folded, voice measured and calm. Open, she repeated, the word foreign in her mouth. It's not what you think. He leaned forward and she saw something practiced in the gesture, something rehearsed. I love you, Elena. You know I do, but we have a responsibility to my family, to the legacy we're supposed to build. Her throat tightened. Daniel. We need a child. His tone softened, but the words cut deeper, and the doctors have been clear about your difficulties. Your difficulties. As if her body's refusal to conceive was a personal failing, a breach of contract. There's someone, he continued, and Elena's world tilted. Someone who understands the situation. She's willing to help us, to give us what we need. The room felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing inward. Someone who, Daniel, are you telling me you've already? Her name is Min Jai. He said it gently, as if the name itself might cushion the blow. She's been very understanding about the arrangement. She knows this isn't about replacing you. It's about completing our family. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Her vision blurred at the edges, a rushing sound filling her ears. You've been. I need you to be mature about this. His voice hardened just slightly. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about duty, about honor. My mother agrees that. Your mother knows. Daniel's silence was answer enough. Elena looked at the man she'd followed across an ocean, the man she'd reshaped her entire life for, and saw a stranger. No, saw him clearly for the first time. She'll be moving into the guest wing next week, he said quietly. I'd appreciate it if you could make her feel welcome. The fertility clinic in Gangnam had white walls that smelled like antiseptic and failure. Elena remembered every visit with crystalline clarity, the cold examination tables, the pitying looks from nurses who couldn't quite hide their judgment, the mounting bills that Daniel paid without comment but his mother referenced constantly. Such expense, she'd say in Korean, loud enough for Elena to hear even if she couldn't fully understand. And still nothing. She'd undergone 3 rounds of IVF. Each one had ended the same way. A phone call, a gentle voice, a crushing absence of the word positive. Daniel had held her hand through the first failure, sent flowers after the second, said nothing after the third. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of his mother's increasingly pointed comments about bloodlines and duty. 8 months of family dinners where cousins paraded their children like trophies, while Elena smiled until her face ached. 8 months of Daniel working later, traveling more, growing distant in ways she'd told herself were temporary. She'd sacrificed everything: her career as a translator in London, her friends, her language, her identity. She'd learned Korean phrases for "I'm sorry" and "thank you" and "I'll try harder," but never quite mastered the ones for "I'm drowning" or "I don't recognize myself anymore." Now Minjai stood in Elena's kitchen, arranging flowers in Elena's vases, humming softly while Daniel watched with something Elena couldn't name. Not quite love, not quite guilt, something comfortable and decided. "Elena," Daniel found her in the bedroom, packing with trembling hands. "Where are you going?" "Does it matter?" "Don't be dramatic. This is a practical arrangement. You're still my wife. You'll still have everything you..." Everything except dignity. She folded a sweater with mechanical precision. Everything except truth. "I'm giving you options." His voice rose, frustrated now. "You could stay, be part of this. Help raise the child as ours, my mother thinks." "Your mother," Elena laughed, a brittle sound that cracked in the middle. "Your mother has wanted me gone since the wedding. Now she gets her wish and a grandchild, very efficient." "That's not fair." She turned to face him fully. "You brought your mistress into our home and asked me to be mature about it. Please don't lecture me about fairness." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I thought you understood what you were marrying into, the expectations, the responsibilities." "I understood I was marrying a man who loved me." Elena's voice dropped to something quiet and devastating. "I was wrong." She left with one suitcase and 4 years of memories that felt like someone else's life entirely. The door closed behind her with a sound like finality. The Shilla Hotel lobby existed in a different stratosphere than Elena's current reality. All marble columns and hushed luxury and prices that made her chest tight with anxiety. But it was central, anonymous, and far enough from Daniel's world that she could pretend to breathe. She lasted 2 nights before her credit card declined. Elena sat in the hotel bar at 3 in the afternoon, nursing a glass of wine she couldn't afford, staring at the numbers on her phone screen. Her savings wouldn't last a month. Her work visa was tied to Daniel's employment. She had no family in Korea, no real friends outside his social circle. She'd never felt more alone. "You're holding that glass like it might explode." The voice was low, amused, speaking English with a Korean accent that suggested both fluency and choice. Elena looked up into the face of a man who belonged in this hotel. Expensive suit, careful grooming, the kind of confidence that came from never doubting you'd be the most powerful person in any room. "Sorry, is this seat taken?" He gestured to the bar stool beside her, though the bar was nearly empty. "It's yours if you want it." He sat, ordered something in Korean that made the bartender nod with respect, then turned to study her with dark eyes that missed nothing. "Kang Tae-jun." "Elena." She didn't offer her last name, didn't know if she wanted to keep it. "You're British." He said it like a fact he already knew. "Originally." She took another sip of wine. "These days I'm not sure what I am." "Recently separated," Tae-jun observed, his gaze dropping briefly to her left hand where her wedding ring had left a pale indent. "Husband's family." Elena's laugh was sharp. "Is it that obvious?" "I've seen the pattern before. Foreign wife, Korean husband, traditional family." He accepted his drink from the bartender. "Let me guess, they tolerated you until you couldn't give them what they needed. Then they found someone who could." The accuracy of it stole her breath. "You're very perceptive." "I'm very informed." Tae-jun's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your husband is Daniel Park, second son of Park Industries, married 4 years ago in a ceremony that caused quite a scandal. His mother wanted a different match." Elena set down her glass carefully. "Why do you know that?" "Because I make it my business to know things about the Park family." He paused. "They're competitors, and not particularly ethical ones." "Then why are you talking to me?" "Because you're about to make a choice." Taejun turned to face her fully, and Elena saw the predator beneath the polish. You can disappear quietly, go back to London, let your husband's family write the story however they want. Or you can let me help you write a different ending. Elena's pulse quickened. What kind of help? The strategic kind. Taejun pulled a business card from his pocket, placed it on the bar between them. CEO, Kang Corporation. Your husband's family has been undermining my business interests for 2 years. They're also remarkably skilled at hiding their own indiscretions. I'd very much like to change that. You want revenge? I want justice. There's a difference. He met her eyes, and I think you might want the same thing. Elena looked at the card, at this stranger offering her something that felt like power and danger in equal measure. What exactly are you proposing? A relationship for appearances. Taejun's voice was clinical, businesslike. We're seen together at the right events in the right places. It creates questions, speculation, and it gives you protection. My name carries weight. Your husband's family can't touch you if you're connected to me. And what do you get? Access to information you have about the Park family, business practices, financial arrangements, personal weaknesses. He paused, and the satisfaction of watching Daniel Park unravel when he realizes his discarded wife has become untouchable. Elena's hands were shaking. From fear or excitement, she couldn't tell. This is insane. This is strategic. Taejun slid the card closer. You don't owe Daniel Park your silence. You don't owe his family your absence. And you certainly don't owe them your destruction. I don't know anything about corporate warfare. You don't need to, you just need to trust me. He stood, adjusted his cuffs. Think about it, you have my number, but Elena. She looked up. Whatever you decide, don't go back to that house. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you broken. He left her with the card, the unfinished drink, and the first spark of something she hadn't felt in years. Fury. The apartment Taejun provided wasn't a residence, it was a statement. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Gangnam, furniture that whispered wealth without shouting it, a kitchen Elena would actually use. The closet held clothes in her size, designer labels she'd only ever admired in windows. A laptop sat on the desk with a note. For your work, welcome back. I don't understand, Elena said, turning to face Taejun in the doorway. This is too much. This is strategic. He moved into the space with the ease of someone who owned half of Seoul. If you're going to be seen with me, you need to look like you belong. That means clothes, transportation, security. Security. The Parks aren't going to be happy when this becomes public. Taejun's expression hardened. I won't have you vulnerable. Elena sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed. I called you 3 days ago. How did you arrange all this? I'm very efficient when motivated. He sat across from her, maintaining careful distance. Here's how this works. I have a charity gala tomorrow night. We'll arrive together. Photographs will be taken. Questions will be asked. You'll smile, say nothing substantive, and let me handle the social maneuvering. And then we do it again and again, until the narrative shifts from poor Elena was replaced to Elena upgraded. Taejun leaned forward. But this only works if you commit. Half measures will make you look desperate. Full commitment makes you look powerful. I don't feel powerful. That's fine, you just need to look it. The feeling comes later. The gala was a test Elena hadn't studied for. She wore a midnight blue gown that transformed her into someone she barely recognized. Elegant, composed, untouchable. Taejun's hand rested lightly on her lower back as they entered the ballroom, a gesture that looked intimate but felt protective. The whisper started immediately. Is that Elena Park? Who is she with? Kang Taejun doesn't bring dates to these things. Across the room, Elena spotted Daniel's mother first, her face frozen in shock and fury. Then Daniel himself, Minjai clinging to his arm, both of them starring with expressions Elena would remember forever. "Breathe," Taejun murmured in her ear. "You're doing perfectly." "They look angry." "Good, that's the point." The evening blurred, introductions to CEOs and politicians, conversations in Korean that Taejun translated seamlessly, champagne she barely tasted. But Elena felt every moment Daniel's eyes followed her, every instant his certainty crumbled just a little more. When they left, flashbulbs exploded like small supernovas. The headlines the next morning were everything Taejun had promised. Kang Taejun's mystery woman, who is Elena Park. Park Industries, heir's ex-wife spotted with rival CEO. The revenge romance everyone's talking about. Elena's phone rang 17 times before noon, all calls from Daniel. She answered none of them. Instead, she sat in her new apartment with Taejun, planning the next move like generals studying a battlefield. "Your language skills," Taejun said, reviewing notes on his tablet. "You're a trained translator." "Was before the marriage." "Then we get you back into it." He made a note. "I have a subsidiary that handles international contracts. They need someone fluent in English and Korean. You'd be consulting, setting your own hours." "You're giving me a job." "I'm giving you credibility." Taejun looked up. "The narrative shift isn't just about who you're dating, it's about who you're becoming. Independent, valuable, not a discarded wife, a professional who moved on." Elena felt something uncurl in her chest. "You've thought of everything." "That's what I do." He paused. "But Elena, you need to understand something. This will get worse before it gets better. Daniel will try to control the narrative. His family will spread rumors. Min-jae will be positioned as the victim. Are you ready for that?" She thought about the guest wing in her former home, about Min-jae's flowers in her vases, about Daniel's calm voice asking her to be mature. "I'm ready." Over the next 6 weeks, Elena stopped being a casualty and became a phenomenon. She took the consulting position and proved herself immediately. Her translations were flawless, her insights valuable, her professionalism unquestionable. She attended gallery openings and business dinners on Taejun's arm, each appearance calculated to maximize visibility and impact. She learned to smile for cameras, to deflect personal questions with grace, to wear power like the designer clothes that no longer felt like costume. And somewhere in the calculated performances, something shifted. Taejun stopped feeling like a strategic partner and started feeling like something else. The moment she realized it was at a private dinner in his penthouse, ostensibly to prepare for an upcoming investor meeting. They'd worked through strategy until the wine made the edges soft, until conversation drifted from business to something more honest. "Why are you really doing this?" Elena asked, curled into the corner of his leather sofa. Taejun considered the question, swirling whiskey in his glass. "Initially, because I wanted to damage the park's reputation and you were the perfect vehicle. And now," his eyes met hers with something raw and unguarded, "now I'm doing it because watching you become who you were always meant to be is the most satisfying thing I've ever been part of." Elena's breath caught. "Taejun, I'm not asking for anything." He set down his glass. "This arrangement has terms and I'll honor them, but I'd be lying if I said it was still purely strategic." The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Elena knew crossing this line would complicate everything, knew that mixing revenge with romance was playing with fire. She kissed him anyway. It was soft at first, testing, then deeper when his hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Elena saw her own confusion mirrored in his expression. "That was," she started. "Unplanned," he finished. "Strategic disaster. Terrible timing." They looked at each other and laughed, the tension breaking into something almost normal. "What do we do now?" Elena asked. Jun traced her jawline with his thumb. Whatever you want. This is your choice, Elena. It always has been. Meanwhile, across Seoul, Daniel Park was unraveling. The business partnerships his father had cultivated for decades were mysteriously cooling. Investors were pulling back. Rumors circulated about financial irregularities, about contracts secured through less than ethical means. And everywhere he looked, there was Elena, confident, successful, untouchable, with Kang Tae-jun at her side. Min-jae grew increasingly anxious, her promised position in the family feeling less secure. Daniel's mother made calls that went unreturned. The narrative was slipping away from them, rewritten by a woman they dismissed as powerless. Daniel's 17th call to Elena finally connected. "What do you want?" Her voice was cold, unfamiliar. "To talk, please, Elena. This has gone far enough." "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play games. You're with him to hurt me. I understand that. But you're damaging more than just our family. You're destroying legitimate business interests." Elena's laugh was sharp. "Legitimate? That's fascinating. Tell me, Daniel, are you familiar with the Daejeon Corporation contract? The one your father secured through falsified environmental reports?" Silence. "Or the Sompa development deal? The one involving bribed city officials?" Her voice hardened. "I may have been a decorative wife, but I wasn't deaf. I heard things, saw documents, and now I have someone who knows exactly what to do with that information." "Elena, please. You asked me to be mature, to accept your mistress in my home with grace and understanding." She paused. "Consider this my maturity. I'm not destroying you, Daniel. I'm simply letting the truth do what truth does." She ended the call. Tae-jun, listening from across the room, smiled. "You're terrifying when you're angry." "I'm just getting started." But late at night, alone in her perfect apartment, Elena wondered who she was becoming. The woman who'd arrived in Korea 4 years ago had been soft, hopeful, romantic. She'd believed in love conquering cultural differences, in commitment overcoming obstacles. She'd been naive. The woman she was now, calculating, strategic, partnered with a man who'd weaponized her pain for corporate gain, felt powerful but unfamiliar. She'd traded vulnerability for armor, and some nights the armor felt like a cage. "Are you awake?" Tae-jun's voice came through her phone at 2 in the morning. "Can't sleep." "Come upstairs." His penthouse was 3 floors above hers, accessible by private elevator. Elena found him on the terrace, soul spread out below like scattered diamonds. "I've been thinking," she said, joining him at the railing. "Dangerous activity." "I'm enjoying this." The confession felt like weakness. The revenge, the power, watching Daniel scramble. "I'm enjoying it, and that scares me." Tae-jun turned to face her. "Why does it scare you?" "Because I don't know if I'm getting justice or becoming vindictive. I don't know where the line is anymore." Elena's voice cracked. "What if I'm just as manipulative as he was? What if I'm using you the way he used Min-jae?" "There's a difference." Tae-jun's hand found hers. "You're not lying. You're not destroying anyone innocent. You're exposing corruption and reclaiming your life. That's not the same as what Daniel did." "Then why does it feel so complicated?" "Because revenge is always complicated." He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "But Elena, this stopped being just revenge weeks ago, for both of us." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "What is it now?" "Something real. Something that started as strategy and became." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I can't lie anymore and say I'm using you for business advantage. I fell somewhere between the 3rd gala and the moment you told off Daniel's mother in perfect Korean." Elena's laugh was watery. "That was your favorite moment." "You were magnificent." His voice was soft against her hair. "You've been magnificent all along. I just gave you the platform to show it." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm afraid of losing myself in this. of becoming someone defined by anger. Then we stop. T-Jun's expression was serious. Right now, we end the arrangement. I handle the parks through conventional business channels and you build your life however you want. Without me, without revenge, without any of it. You'd do that. I'd do anything you asked. He cupped her face. Because somewhere in this elaborate performance I fell in love with you, the real you, not the strategy, not the revenge plot, you. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. That's impossibly poor timing. The absolute worst. And completely complicates everything. Catastrophically. She kissed him again, slower this time, pouring 4 years of grief and new hope into the gesture. When they pulled apart, she knew the decision she'd already made. I don't want to stop, she whispered, but I want to finish this the right way, not just destruction, truth. T-Jun smiled. Then let's give them truth. A month later, the medical records arrived via encrypted email from a source T-Jun wouldn't name. Elena stared at the documents on her laptop screen, reading the same lines over and over until the words stopped making sense and started making everything make sense. Patient Park Daniel. Diagnosis: azoospermia, complete absence of sperm. Prognosis: permanent infertility. Date of diagnosis: March 2019. 2 months before their wedding. Elena's hands shook as she scrolled through accompanying documents, Daniel's medical history, specialist consultations, recommendations for donor sperm that he'd rejected. Every page another lie, another layer of deception. He'd known. For 6 years he'd known he couldn't have children, and he'd let her blame herself. Let her endure treatments. Let her body become a battlefield. Let his family shame her for a failure that was never hers. Elena, T-Jun's voice came from behind her, gentle and cautious. Say something. He knew. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected. Every injection, every test, every fucking appointment, he knew it was pointless. He let me believe I was broken. I know, I'm sorry. She turned to face him, fury and devastation warring in her chest. Minjai's baby, it's not his. No, the child is from a donor, arranged through a private clinic, documented under medical tourism to hide the records. T-Jun moved closer. He was never going to tell you. He was going to let you live with that guilt forever. Elena stood abruptly, packing the apartment like a caged animal. What else? Financial records showing bribes to city officials, falsified environmental reports and contract manipulation. T-Jun pulled up files on his tablet, enough to trigger investigations, tank their stock price and destroy their reputation. But Elena... What? This is permanent. Once we release this, there's no walking it back. Daniel's family will be ruined. Minjai's child will grow up with this scandal. Are you certain? Elena thought about the fertility clinic, about Daniel's hand growing slack in hers, about his mother's cutting comments, about being replaced in her own home. I'm certain about the truth, she said quietly. What they do with it is their choice. The leak started small. A business journalist known for investigating corporate corruption, an anonymous tip with impeccable documentation. Within 48 hours, the story exploded across Korean media. Park Industries scandal, bribery, fraud, and medical deception. CEO's son FAKD fertility, ex-wife SBEAKS out. Elena's statement was brief, dignified, devastating. I endured years of medical treatments and personal shame for fertility issues that were never mine. I was replaced in my marriage by a woman carrying a donor child that my ex-husband pretended was his biological son. I was asked to accept this arrangement with maturity and grace. Instead, I'm choosing to accept the truth with dignity and self-respect. The response was seismic. Business partners severed contracts within hours. Investors pulled funding. Stock prices plummeted. government agencies announced investigations into the documented bribes and environmental violations. Min-jae disappeared from public view within a day, returning to her family with the baby and no wedding ring. Daniel's mother stopped answering calls. And Daniel called Elena 23 times before finally appearing at her apartment building. Security stopped him in the lobby, but Elena saw him through the cameras, saw how he'd aged in weeks, how desperation had replaced his practiced calm. "Should I send him away?" the security guard asked. Elena considered letting him suffer without closure, letting him wonder forever if she'd felt even a fraction of his current anguish. Then she thought about the woman she wanted to be when this was over. 5 minutes, she said, downstairs, public space. She met him in the lobby with Tae-jun at her side, not possessive, just present, a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Daniel looked broken. "Good. Elena, please, you have to stop this. My family, the business, everything is falling apart. Then I suggest you start cooperating with investigators." Her voice was level calm. "Tell the truth for once. It wasn't supposed to be like this." His eyes were desperate. "I loved you, I still." "You loved the idea of me." Elena cut him off. "The foreign wife who'd be grateful for your family's acceptance, who'd bear your shame without question, who'd disappear quietly when you needed something else." She paused. "You loved having someone to blame." "The fertility issues. I didn't know how to tell you." "You told me nothing. You let me believe my body had failed us both. You let your mother tear me apart. You brought another woman into our home." Elena's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "You asked me to be mature about my own humiliation." "Elena." "I'm done, Daniel, with you, with your family, with carrying guilt that was never mine." She stepped back, closer to Tae-jun. "You wanted me to accept the truth with grace. Here it is. I'm better without you. I'm stronger without you, and I'll be happy without you." With him, Daniel's gaze shifted to Tae-jun, venomous. "You think this is love? He's using you for revenge." "We're using each other for honesty." Tae-jun spoke for the first time, his voice carrying quiet menace. "Something you clearly struggle with." "Elena, please, for what we had." "What we had was a lie." She turned toward the elevator. "Don't contact me again. Your lawyers can speak to mine." She walked away without looking back, Tae-jun's hand finding the small of her back in that now familiar gesture of support. Behind them, Daniel collapsed into a lobby chair, the last remnant of his composure crumbling into something that looked like grief but felt like justice. The divorce papers arrived 6 weeks later, signed under circumstances that heavily favored Elena. Daniel's family, desperate to minimize scandal, agreed to terms that included a substantial settlement, return of her independence, and a non-disparagement clause that went both ways. Elena read through them in her apartment now purchased with her own money from her consulting work, and felt nothing. No triumph, no bitterness, just a quiet sense of closure. "Are you going to sign?" Tae-jun asked from the kitchen, making tea with the comfortable domesticity they'd fallen into. "Yes," she found the pen, signed her name with steady hands. "It's done." "How do you feel?" "Free." Elena looked up at him. "Is that wrong? Shouldn't I feel something more complicated?" "You've earned simple feelings." He brought her the tea, settling beside her on the sofa. "You've done the complicated part. Now you get to just live." She leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. "What happens now, to us?" Tae-jun was quiet for a moment, and Elena felt her stomach tighten with anticipation and fear. "I want to keep doing this," he said finally, "but without the performance, without the strategy, just us." "That's terrifying." "Absolutely," he smiled. "We started this as fake, turned it into revenge, became real somewhere in the middle. Now we get to find out what it is when it's just honest." Elena turned to face him fully. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them, massive and world-altering. Taejun's expression went through several rapid shifts, shock, calculation, then something soft and wondering. "Pregnant," he repeated. 8 weeks. Elena's hand drifted to her still flat stomach. "I found out 3 days ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, because this wasn't part of the plan, and I know we're just figuring out what we are, and I don't expect." "Elena," he caught her hand, "breathe." She did shakily. "Is this something you want?" he asked carefully. "Yes." The certainty surprised her. 4 years ago I wanted a baby for the wrong reasons. For Daniel, for his family, to prove I belonged. But this, she pressed her hand over his. This is mine to choose. "Then what do you need from me?" Elena studied his face, looking for judgment or panic or retreat. Found only steady presence and genuine question. "I need to know you're choosing this too," she said quietly. "Not out of obligation or guilt or—" "I'm choosing you." Taejun's voice was firm. "You, the baby, whatever comes next, not because I have to, because I want to. Even though we've only been really together for—" "Even though," he pulled her closer. "We did everything backward, Elena. Started with revenge, fell in love in the middle, became real at the end. Why should this be any different?" She laughed, watery and relieved. "This is insane. This is us." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We'll figure it out together, however you want." Elena felt the last knot of fear loosen in her chest. "I want everything. The complicated, messy, real thing. No more performance." "Deal." Taejun rested his hand over hers on her stomach. "Should we tell people?" "Not yet," Elena smiled. "Let's keep this one secret for ourselves just for a little while. Our first secret that's not about revenge. Our first secret that's about joy." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Seoul's lights through the windows, building a future neither had planned but both were choosing. Across the city, Daniel faced legal proceedings and corporate collapse. Min-jae raised a baby alone, the promised life evaporating under scrutiny. The Park family scrambled to rebuild a reputation that might never recover. But Elena no longer watched their downfall. She'd moved beyond needing to see their suffering. She was too busy building something new. 3 years later, the office overlooked Gangnam with floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the afternoon light. Elena sat at her desk, reviewing contracts in Korean and English with the ease of someone who'd never lost herself, just temporarily misplaced her confidence. Her company, a translation and international consulting firm, occupied 2 floors now, employed 15 people, and handled contracts for some of the biggest corporations in Seoul, including, ironically, several who'd dropped Park Industries during the scandal. Mrs. Kang, her assistant, poked her head in. "Your 3 o'clock is here." "Send them in." Elena had kept her surname legally, added Kang in professional contexts when it was strategic, and answered to both with equal comfort. She was learning to contain multitudes. At home, the house she and Taejun had bought together, big enough for family and small enough to stay cozy. Their daughter played in a sunroom that overlooked a garden. Jaewoo was 2, bilingual, stubborn, and carried her mother's determination with her father's strategic mind. She'd never know she was conceived during a revenge plot turned love story. That was fine. Some stories weren't for children. "Mommy's home," Jaewoo announced that evening, barreling toward Elena with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her belonging. Elena scooped her up, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and playground adventure. "Did you have fun with Daddy?" "We went to the park. I climbed the big slide." "The big slide, that's very brave." Taejun emerged from the kitchen, still in work clothes but barefoot, comfortable in the life they'd built. "She's fearless. I'm terrified." "She gets it from you." "She gets it from both of us." He kissed Elena in greeting, then Jaiwoo's forehead. Dinner's almost ready. This was the life Elena had never imagined wanting. Domestic, rooted, chosen. Not sacrificed for, fought for. Later, after Jaiwoo was asleep, and the house settled into quiet, Elena found Tae-jun on the terrace where they'd once stood planning revenge. "I saw something today," she said, settling beside him. "An article about Park Industries restructuring under new management. Daniel's out completely. Took a position at a subsidiary in Busan, low profile, his mother retired." Elena sipped her wine, a single glass now, savored slowly. The article mentioned his name once in passing, like a footnote. "How does that make you feel?" She considered the question honestly. Nothing. Maybe a little sad for who he could have been if he'd chosen differently, but mostly, nothing. Tae-jun pulled her against his side. "That's growth. Or apathy. There's a difference between apathy and peace." He kissed her temple. "You earned peace." Elena thought about the woman who'd arrived at the Shilla Hotel 3 years ago, broken, desperate, lost. Thought about the fury that had rebuilt her, the strategy that had protected her, the love that had transformed her. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" she asked. "When you first approached me at that bar?" "Honestly, no," Tae-jun smiled. "I thought I'd use you for leverage, damage the park's reputation, and we'd part ways professionally enriched." "Romantic. I'm a businessman. Romance wasn't the plan." "And now?" "Now I'm a businessman who's pathetically in love with his wife and terrified every time our daughter climbs something." He turned to face her. "Now romance is the entire point." "That's very off-brand for you." "You've ruined me." His eyes were warm, teasing. "I used to be ruthless." "You're still ruthless. You just have better priorities." They sat in comfortable silence, souls spreading out below them like possibility. Somewhere in that city, Daniel was rebuilding a smaller life. Min-jae was raising a son who'd grow up with questions. The Park family was learning to navigate scandal and consequence. But that was their story now. Elena's had moved on. "Jaiwoo asked about siblings today," Tae-jun said casually. "Did she?" "Apparently her friend at school has a baby brother, and she's very jealous." Elena laughed. "Already competitive, we're in trouble." "So is that a no, or a let's discuss it later?" She turned to study his face. The man who'd offered her revenge and given her partnership, who'd promised strategy and delivered love, who'd never once asked her to be anything but exactly who she was. "It's a let's discuss it later," she said softly. "When I'm not trying to close the Hanwha deal and you're not traveling every other week." "Fair," he pulled her closer. "But for the record, I'm voting yes." "Noted." "Just saying, Jaiwoo could use an ally." "She has you wrapped around her finger already. She doesn't need help." "She gets that from you too." Elena smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Through the windows, she could see Jaiwoo's night light glowing in her room, a lighthouse in their carefully constructed life. This wasn't the ending she'd imagined at 26, standing in a British registry office promising forever to a man who'd made promises in bad faith. This wasn't the redemption arc she'd pictured that first night at the hotel bar, agreeing to a fake relationship born from mutual fury. This was better, messier, more complicated, more real. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Elena lifted her head to meet his eyes. "For giving me the platform to become who I was always meant to be. For falling in love with me even though it ruined your revenge plot." "For the record, the revenge plot worked out fine." Tae-jun smiled. "And you would have found yourself with or without me. I just had the privilege of watching it happen." "That's very humble for someone who orchestrated an entire corporate takedown." "I contain multitudes." Elena kissed him, slow and sweet, tasting the future in the present moment. When they pulled apart, the city lights blurred like stars. "One more thing," Tae-jun said. Oh. I got an email today from Daniel. Elena stilled. What did he want? To apologize, to wish us well, to say he's in therapy and working on. He paused. It was actually fairly genuine, took responsibility without making excuses. How do you feel about that? Relieved mostly, that he's getting help, that he can acknowledge what he did. T-Jun studied her face. Do you want to respond? Elena thought about it, about closure and growth and the difference between forgiveness and absolution, about the man Daniel was becoming versus who he'd been. Maybe, she said finally, eventually, when it feels right and not obligatory. No rush. No rush, she agreed. Because that was the luxury of peace. Time stretched out ahead of them, measured in choices rather than crises, in joy rather than survival. Inside, Jaiwoo stirred in her sleep, calling out for water. Elena stood to go to her, then paused. You know what the crazy part is, she said. What? I'm grateful for all of it, even the painful parts. Elena looked back at T-Jun, because they led here to this, to us. That's not crazy, he stood, taking her hand. That's wisdom. They went inside together, toward their daughter's voice and their shared life and the future they were writing in real time. Not performance, not strategy, not revenge. Just love, complicated, messy, hard-won, real love. And that, Elena thought as she lifted Jaiwoo into her arms and carried her to the kitchen for water, was the best kind of untouchable. Final message. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe pushing you toward something better. Daniel's betrayal didn't break Elena. It freed her to discover who she was beneath all the compromise and sacrifice. It led her to someone who valued her strength, not her compliance. It showed her that being mature about mistreatment isn't wisdom, it's self-abandonment. 3 years later, Elena wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, building a business, raising a daughter, choosing love that chose her back, living a life so authentic that the people who discarded her became irrelevant. That's what untouchable really means. If you enjoyed Elena's story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I want to hear from you. Would you ever agree to an open marriage to save your relationship? And where in the world are you watching from? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.